So tonight is actually considered a very auspicious night. In India, it is called Guru Purnima. So you see there's a full moon outside, and it is generally the day that all people, regardless of affiliation or which particular lineage they are with, where they offer homage to the Supreme Lord as the Adi Guru, the original teacher, and to those who represent him in this world. So, we're talking about the topic of self-love because I've had quite a few questions. I've sort of touched on it in passing a couple of times. And there has been some questions, and particularly in relation to something I mentioned a week or two ago. So we're kind of making a little bit of fun of it. Are we allowed to do that? People are not going to pull their hair out and throw things at me or whatever. What if I break up with me? It's a bit of a strange question, but it has, there is on the part of people that are engaged in true transcendentalism, the whole self-love thing is a bit of a worry. It's a bit of a worry because it's not really in people's actual interest to head down this path. So we'll talk a little bit about that. This idea has an origin. It actually came from somewhere. It's not like somebody just pulled it out of the air. And it became kind of somewhat prevalent during the 60s. For those of you that are old enough, the peace and love thing, and the idea of self-love. And it was tied into a particular type of philosophy that became prevalent, and then of course many people from that era went on to become professionals, and a lot of them were professionals in the academe, and psychiatry became a real popular thing that everybody was dabbling with. There's an amazing documentary called The Century of the Self. It was put out by the BBC, and it really explores in a 4-hour documentary, 4 parts, about the development of the idea of the self and how it became used by different people, politicians, businesses, to fundamentally exploit the general population. And so it became very ingrained as being an authentic and healthy idea. But we're often not very much aware of this. We sort of just go along for the ride. When was Whitney Houston happening? It's like the 90s, 80s? She sang a song called The Greatest Love, where now this idea became totally enshrined in popular culture. And some of the lyrics were, the greatest love of all, the greatest love of all is easy to achieve. Learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. So, of course, when you've got in their time some popular person getting up and singing about these ideas and nobody's saying anything very much about it, then it tends to lead some credence to this idea that perhaps it's okay, or perhaps it's right, perhaps it's something we should be very much involved in. So I just took a quick cruise on the internet, and I was I was completely blown away how even amongst so-called health professionals, people with PhDs in psychiatry are so aggressively promoting this idea now. And so, I mean, I saw articles like, unconditional love is possible, but only from yourself. You are the only one that could possibly love yourself unconditionally. Then we had, tapping into self-compassion to help ease everyday suffering. 30 ways to practice self-love, to be good to yourself. And then you've got other health professionals, and those were in from the Psychology Today was the source of those. In the Huffington Post we had a good one, self-love must come first. How to love yourself. With the idea being, and I was quite astonished. I attended with my wife's family a wedding of her sister some years ago, like a long time ago, and the priest was also espousing this idea, and it became prevalent amongst different religious orders, where the twisted interpretation is given to the commandment of Lord Jesus that one should love thy neighbor or thy brother as thyself. So see, you have to love yourself first, and then you can love your brother or others like you are loving yourself. And that's just like, well, I guess you could look at it that way. That's okay to do that. But there is no historical, spiritual teaching, none, zero. There is no historical spiritual teaching that supports this idea. So while I was, part of the things that stimulated this, apart from the questions, my wife sent me an article, and this guy is writing about the Dalai Lama speaking of self-love. You want to know what the Dalai Lama's position is? Or no? His title of his article was, Nobody will love you until you love yourself is baloney, says the Dalai Lama. Do this instead. And then he went on to explain what it is that a person needs to do in order to come to the platform of actual happiness. And he broke it down. He said that there were two key factors that make it so a person can achieve happiness. One, they need to have an actual purpose. And we're not talking about self-love as being the purpose, but their life needs to be a purpose-filled life or a purposeful life. And the second thing he said is in helping others. These two things, he says, will bring a person to happiness. And of course, both of those things have little or nothing to do with what we might consider to be selfish interest. So he, in the book that he wrote on the subject, or where this was mentioned, he says, I believe that the proper utilization of time is this. So we're talking about what you do with your life all day, every day. If you can serve other people, other sentient beings, if not, at least refrain from harming them. I think this is the whole basis of my philosophy, says the Dalai Lama. Wow, that's a kind of like a pretty abrupt departure from the idea of me being the center of everything. From the spiritual perspective, the idea of being the center of everything is considered to be spiritually actually quite destructive. In that book by the Dalai Lama, he brings up all these studies that show that people that have a lot of self-interest are actually ultimately unhappy. And people that have less self-interest, they're more of a giving and a serving and a sharing heart, their lives are way happier, way better. They feel less strain and stress and concern. They're able to take the ups and downs of life and sort of flow with it. And he quotes all of these, of course, academic studies to support this idea. So, but, you know, we have this whole culture now where people are encouraged to become very, what they say is self-focused. And they say that there is a problem that people don't have enough self-esteem. Well, standing in front of a mirror and telling yourself that you are beautiful, that you are worthy, that you are fantastic, is actually not a healthy exercise. Because the idea of self-love and self-hate come from exactly the same place. They talk about how people tend to beat themselves up. They have all these negative thoughts or ideas about themselves and they tend to beat themselves up. And so the way to get over self-loathing or self-hate is to stand in front of a mirror or to write a list of things about how wonderful you are, or to make these declarations in front of a mirror. Both of these ideas, self-love and self-hate, come from the same place, which is considered ignorance, or in Sanskrit this is avidya, ignorance. They come from the idea that the body or my mind is me. There is zero recognition of my true spiritual identity, who I actually am. And what it does is make it so a person is going to be uninclined, not want to actually go any deeper into really trying to find out more about this really important subject. Who am I? What are all these things I am feeling and experiencing? What are these things that are going on inside me? The process of actual meditation is for this purpose. You know, we engage on these nights, they call them mantra night. We engage in using or utilizing mantra and kirtan, this singing or group congregational chanting of these transcendental sounds. It is stated that in this age, this is the most effective means. And the description is given, it's just like, you don't have to understand the hows and the whys and all the technical things associated with the process. The description is given just as you put food into the mouth and the stomach, and without thinking about it, the stomach automatically digests with the fire of digestion, dissolves the food. In a similar manner, by engaging in this meditation, this process, not because of me or any qualification I have, but because of the potency of these spiritual sounds, it will gradually dissolve the subtle body. From the Vedas and yogic teachings, we understand that you fundamentally have two coverings. You have this gross physical body, which we can all see when we look at each other. But there is also a subtle body, which is not very visible. This subtle body is constituted by the mind, what's called the intelligence or buddhi, and ahankara, the false ego, the egotistic idea, I am this, I am that, without any reference to my true spiritual identity. So it is these two coverings of you, the living being, the spiritual being, that makes it so that we are engrossed and entangled in the world and keeps us away from experiencing our true inner spiritual nature, our eternal spiritual nature, to be able to really experience completely what is happiness and what is love. So I have a couple of really wonderful verses that I actually wanted to share with you. And as you can see, this is actually quite a big subject, and given the limited time that we have, we're not going into very much detail. But a couple of weeks ago, we talked about a form of meditation that the yogis would engage in, which was to focus on a form of the Lord within one's heart. This is known as Paramatma, which means the Supreme Soul. And we mentioned that in the Upanishads, there is a description of like two bodies, two people inhabiting the same body. One is the living being, that is you, and the other one is the Supreme Lord manifest in this form known as Paramatma. And how they likened it to two birds. One bird is like totally engrossed and hopping from branch to branch in that tree and trying to taste all the fruit. And the other bird is simply sitting back waiting for this first bird to turn and recognize the eternal friend. This is actually the true meaning of the word soulmate. People are looking for a soulmate. Everybody is hoping to find the perfect person to love and to live happily ever after with. The reason that we have that aspiration or desire is because in truth we do have a soulmate, but it is not another entity or person of this world. It is a transcendental personality. And the important, the most important thing that is needed to make it so we can refocus our attention is to become free from the selfish spirit, the self-centered spirit. The selfish spirit or self-centered spirit, even if it is done in goodness and kindness, which it often is, still will make it so we are uninclined to reconnect. So from a very ancient text called the Bhagavad Purana, it is a wonderful verse. When a person gives up the selfish conception by which one thinks, this is my property, that is his. So it means this is an example. It's not the sole way, but it is an example of how the selfish conception is manifest, where I see distinctions. And when a person is no longer concerned with the pleasures of this world, nor is indifferent to the discomforts of others, he becomes fully peaceful and satisfied. So one of the unfortunate realities is that even if I have the most pure intention, the more I become self-focused, the more I will tend to be very unaware of others' suffering. You know, it's always amazing when people get into this space, they become completely absorbed in the idea of, if you meet someone, if you go somewhere, my experience of it. I am not mindful of, I'm mindful of the effect that other people and the environment has on me, but I am completely not mindful of the effect that I may have on others. I'm not saying this is bad or evil or anything, it's just a reality. When you become self-focused, you tend to become more disassociated from others, whereas a true manifestation of enlightenment is the growing feel of compassion, empathy for all others. So I'm going to just read this whole thing again, because I only got halfway through it. When one gives up the selfish conception by which one thinks, this is my property and that is his, and when a person no longer is concerned with the pleasures of this world, or is indifferent to the discomforts of others, he becomes fully peaceful and satisfied. He considers himself simply one amongst all the living beings who are equally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and such a satisfied yogi is considered to be at the highest standard of devotion to the Supreme. And then in another verse, which I'll just finish with, in a very humble plea, this statement is made: I am such a fool. No, this is not self-loathing, this is a recognition of things. I am such a fool that I have given up the service of that person who, being eternally situated within my heart, is actually most dear to me. That most dear one is the Lord of the universe, who is the bestower of real love and happiness, and the source of all prosperity. Although he is in my own heart, I have completely neglected him. Instead, I have ignorantly served insignificant people who can never satisfy my real desires and who have simply brought me suffering, unhappiness, fear, anxiety, lamentation, and illusion. Is that too harsh? Can we handle this or what? Or is it a bit much? Everybody's very quiet. Was that too serious? You know, it's actually a very serious subject, and I promise going forward we will revert to things that may be a little bit easier for people. You know, the things that I'm talking about are actually quite challenging. They challenge what we have come to accept. They challenge the ideas that we've formed. They challenge what we think is the purpose of life. They challenge what we think is our realization. And it's not like somebody just pulled these ideas out of the air. They are foundational to all spiritual teaching. They are so ancient. Today, you know, I mentioned this is called Guru Purnima. They also call it Vyasa Puja, which means the day of worshipping Srila Vyasa Deva. Vyasa Deva, he was this incredible personality that was empowered to compile all of the Vedas, vast amounts of teaching that was previously passed in a oral tradition and now was going to be written down for the sake of people going forward. And Vyasadeva, he was not the originator, but he was the compiler of the entire Vedas. Such a vast amount of spiritual teaching. It's unimaginable for many of us who have not had exposure to how broad and deep these teachings are. And they are for our benefit. The desire of all the great spiritual teachers, the great sages, is that you and I will come to the position of immeasurable happiness and the deepest spiritual love. That is their wish, and they are simply showing what the barriers are, what are the things that are making it so that we cannot come to experience that reality. Okay? Too serious? Huh? Or no? A little bit different, yeah? Actually, most of the things that we talk about, we sort of like just touch on kind of briefly. So, I mean, we're in this era now of very short attention spans. And of course, we want to present principles and ideas in a way that people can understand. This particular subject is a little bit on the deep side for many people. But I ask you, because I'm familiar with a number of you, that you would hear this and take it away and consider. Okay? Yeah?
I've been listening, and sorry. You first referenced the industry, the creation of commercialism out of the concept of free love. And it was post 3 periods of war. So you had First World War, Second World War, and Vietnam, where people had given over their autonomy and to fight for what was happening within the world, and in the Western world, not in the East. And I have always wondered about the self being the first teacher, because when I look to myself with compassion, when I have empathy for myself, I develop it internally, and then I can have it for others. So as a child, no one taught me, this is compassion, this is empathy, this is gratitude, this is love. I learned that through self-reflection into my own self.
Yeah.
And then was able to walk in community and say, this person requires compassion, this person, I need to be empathetic. So the self-love, I was curious, because we are the teacher initially of how to
I will. Am I allowed to disagree? I will disagree that I am not the first teacher.
No, I guess I've said that, and
I'm
the first teacher when you spoke about Paramatma.
Yeah, Paramatma.
So Paramatma exists in me.
Yeah.
Paramatma
Exactly.
exists in all of us.
Yes.
So Paramatma is my first teacher.
Yes.
Not the I, not the ego.
Yep.
So I return.
Way to go. We're on board with that one, big time.
So I return to Paramatma.
Yeah.
To see what is happening.
I deeply appreciate your clarification and do completely agree. It is possible that if a person actually deeply reflects enough and can go beyond the dictates of the mind to a place deeper within their heart, that they can take direction. And some people refer to it as like a conscience. In Sanskrit, this is called Chaitya Guru. Chaitya Guru means like the Guru within. This is the Lord within our own heart. So, or Paramatma. The living being is called Atma, which is the self, and then you have Paramatma, the supreme self, which is not you. There is a distinction. And yes, we can and do derive inspiration and clarity and vision. A person, it is possible for a person actually to become fully self-realized through just this internal process, but it is so rare that it's not considered something that people should aim for. What they need to do is to seek an authority, a genuine spiritual and compassionate authority to help us in this, to navigate this path where we actually can come to the point of fully being able to receive direction from within our own heart. That's an important part. So, in your life, if you have had these experiences, and particularly when you're young, they can completely shape your life. Your feeling of empathy and compassion. The true transcendentalist becomes actually quite, I don't want to use the word extreme. It's so great that they can look upon, and you see it in Asia, it's very common, and Africa and the third world, somebody at a stoplight in a city, somebody sitting in a Mercedes Benz, and somebody with almost no clothing and dirty and ribs sticking out, knocking on the window, begging for money. And a true transcendentalist can look at these two individuals and feel equally compassion for them, knowing that the material condition is such a tragedy because it may be a question of one lifetime or two. These two people can change places, and in fact will change places. So why should I not feel as much compassion for somebody that is materially entangled, have lost the way? Whether a person momentarily looks to be very wealthy or have it all together, or seems to be very deprived of even very fundamental necessities. So the nature of the transcendentalist, the more spiritual vision grows, they feel this tremendous heartache. This heartache comes from just looking at the condition of all the living beings in this world, and all of this unimaginable and untold amounts of suffering and difficulty, and the fact that we are separated so much from this Lord within our own heart, where our true home lies. Is that okay?
Yeah.
If you'd like to talk a little bit more about it, if you'd like to, we'll chant for a little bit And then during the meal, if you want, we can hang and discuss further if you'd like. Feel free. You know, if anybody wants to seek a clarification on anything, please do look upon me as I am here to repay a debt. I have a tremendous debt to my spiritual teachers that I can never repay for the amazing gifts that I have received. And while I myself am of no consequence, if you have any form of question or inquiry, anything that you want to ask, there is no dumb question, as we say. All of these things are important. Any inquiry is important. So feel comfortable, and it's not an irritation or a distraction. I come here for the purpose of hoping to be of some service to you all. So if you want to take advantage of that and see what I might be able to contribute in your life, then please do feel free to approach me. Thank you very much. Thank you.